From a law firm in Leeds, and I suppose if there were kids here, they'd probably be wondering why does a lawyer come to talk to them. Well, my own background is actually in the music industry, and came to work at Blacks about 3.5 years ago to expand the team they already had dealing with sports law. And the sports law team had moved on into entertainment, and so I became involved in bringing my music and media sort of background to Blacks. But I thought, for what it's worth, I'll give you a bit of background to how I got there. So I came to Leeds from Scotland in 2001. I was in a variety of different bands, studied music at Leeds University, and then between sort of 2004 and 2006, sort of left uni, just a variety of sort of temping jobs and working in banks and fairly dead-end things like that. Really trying to make the most of a music career, interested in being a sort of performing artist and composer. And then in 2006 formed a band called Heads We Dance, and we were signed to a subsidiary of Warner Records called 679. I don't know, anyone familiar with any of these bands here?
Plan B.
Plan B, and The Streets as well, some people are familiar with. So went and did that for 3-4 years, had an amazing time. We built our own studio, we toured, we worked with some very exciting people, people I've always wanted to work with. And then for one reason or another, again, as I suppose the previous speaker was talking about, things don't always work out quite as you expect. The band split up at the end of 2009. And at that time, in the background, my parents had tried to give me this sort of, have a fallback. And you know what it's like when you're young, you think, well, no, I'm pursuing the vision, I'm going to be in a band, and that's all. But I suppose some kind of common sense prevailed, and so I was retraining in the background about 2008 onwards, with a view to becoming a lawyer. So when the band split up, I thought, well, okay, it's time to then actually do this properly. And I was a little bit hesitant about getting into the commercial law field. I wasn't sure how that would really fit with my skills and my interests and that sort of thing. But I was very lucky to do some work experience. Again, as the previous speaker was talking about, very valuable thing to do. Went into Blacks Solicitors and met them, and really just unlike any law firm that I'd done experience with before, very, very forward thinking, very open-minded about using my own practical and sort of industry experience, if you like, to be able to expand their offering and do something a little bit different that would stand out from our competitors, and also offer clients a service they might not be able to get elsewhere. So I joined Blacks in 2010, and as I said, we've had Blacks is a fairly large kind of private client commercial law firm, 2 offices in Leeds, do absolutely everything apart from crime and legal aid and immigration. But everything else we do, so from property, employment, family law, wills, you name it, we'll do it. So we've got a great kind of broad team there, but we also had a sports law department, and some people may be aware that we've had some ex-pros like Robbie Savage, John Hendry, working as sort of consultants for that sports law department. And the idea behind that really is to give, I suppose, like an industry inside knowledge and experience. There's extra kind of value to the clients. We've got people that have been there and done that and understand it, so when we're acting for sports clients, they know they've got that kind of extra understanding. And I've really come to Blacks and done the same thing with music. So I've still got a studio, I've been in bands and toured with bands, I still write and record now, been involved in DJing, remixing, putting nights on, all these sorts of things. So when I now have music clients coming in the door, they hopefully would see beyond the suit. It's actually understanding their business, and it's building on that experience I've had in the past to offer that sort of full service. Fundamentally, people will ask often, what is music law? I didn't even realise there was such a thing as a music lawyer. What does that even mean? And the truth is, outside of London, it is pretty rare. I'm not aware of any firms in Leeds that deal with it particularly. Really, anywhere in the north, there's some firms in Manchester that might look at it, but we're one of the very few firms that will look at this outside of London. And really, to start off with the sort of specifics, it'll be the actual contracts generally that musicians get involved with, or those in the music industry. So there'll be record labels, publishers, managers, events organisers, We deal with the creative sector generally as well, so also spreads out into graphic design, spreads out into I've got clients who are in the performing arts as well, and again it's not sort of genre specific. So within music we've got opera clients to metal acts. It's generally kind of for the creative sectors. What I tend to do day to day though is the commercial agreements for those in the music industry. So fundamentally recording, publishing and licensing contracts, the ones that most musicians will tend to enter into. Deal a lot with management contracts as well. Probably been aware if you read the press about the music industry particularly that the industry has changed a heck of a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. Big companies like EMI, household names closing, being sold off, HMV closing down, and so again, being split up. These established traditional methods within or arrangements within the music industry have changed, and management contracts are now really important because it's becoming more of an artist-centered world where you've got the idea is artist as brand. So you might have heard of people like Rihanna or Professor Green doing various kind of endorsements of products, or working with brands as being brand ambassadors, that sort of thing. So rather than it being an artist going to a record label and putting records out and them selling a load of records and making all their money through that, it now becomes more of an artist-centered thing where they'll hopefully sell some records, but they'll also get some money from live performances, get money from sponsorship of events, get money from endorsing various products. And really the key relationship in navigating that quite convoluted sea, if you like, is to have a really strong management team. So we deal a lot with management contracts and they're really important. Also deal with sort of, I suppose, more peripheral people that are involved that will try and make things happen, broadly speaking. So agents that put on gigs and live performances and that kind of thing, or theatrical agents that will look for bookings for their performers, through to introducer agreements. And these are a little bit more rare, but where someone's basically got a great contacts book and wants to try and help out people that, I know someone who knows someone sort of thing, trying to kind of find some way of monetizing that, making introductions for people, so I deal with that from time to time as well. Really important thing, I won't bore you with the law behind this, but it's really important, I think, that bands or any kind of group of creatives coming together understand that under the law in this country, a partnership will be deemed to exist. And when that happens, liability is joint and several. So the example I often give in this circumstance is, say a band, 4 lads or whatever, go out on tour and they have to rent in some equipment, get to the end of a gig and their drummer smashes the rented drum kit up and storms out and says, "I've left the band." Well, who do you think then is liable for that?
This partnership, they're all liable equally.
Absolutely, that's the point. And when you're maybe sort of 18, 19 years old, you don't tend to think about that, but then someone from the hiring company will come back and say, "Well, this guy that's left, we can't get hold of him, but we can get hold of you, so you're paying for it." So I deal with intra-band partnership agreements which will set out how liabilities are shared. So if there's someone that's writing the songs, for example, perhaps the publishing income from those will go just to him or her rather than being shared equally. How bands make decisions, who owns things like their name, and any, again, if they're doing any design work, who actually owns that stuff if someone wants to leave. So, yeah. It's not always the easiest thing to bring up, if you're a band in rehearsal room, just a bunch of friends getting together, saying, but actually, a big part of what I do is really advise people that this is a business you're part of. It's the music industry, the music business. It's the same with all creatives, of course. It's that realization that you enjoy the creative side of things, but ultimately it's got to pay the bills at some stage. So you have to understand that you've got to monetize it, you've got to understand that it's a commercial world, and these kind of agreements then come into play. As I said, because the industry has changed and it's becoming more artist-centered, it's been shaken up and people are trying to do other different things now. So you'll find a lot of new kind of businesses coming up, especially around sort of social media and promotion and all these kinds of things, app developers. There's all sorts of crazy and really exciting developments within the creative industries generally, mainly to try and help creatives rise above the noise, is the phrase you often hear. And a lot of people are looking then at setting up companies and then seeking outside investment So that's not only going to be sort of grants and Arts Council funding, but also looking at sort of in the corporate world, I guess you'd call it equity finance, looking for private investors to come in. So that's where it spills over from music-specific work that I do into more sort of commercial, legal stuff, dealing with investments, that kind of stuff. Disputes. As you'd imagine, lots of people in bands, they fall out, or artists fall out with their management teams, and all that stuff. All the cliches are true to an extent. So I deal with departing band members, payment of royalties, you name it. It's keeps life interesting, shall we say? But I have to deal with all that. The way I tend to look at this, again, I suppose looking at using my own experience, is to try and provide more of a practical way forward. I think there are a lot of lawyers who would be used to working in litigation with sort of commercial corporate clients, would be immediately thinking, well, there's a certain way of dealing with this, it's all, we'll issue proceedings, and immediately go down that kind of line. Having been part of this world and still part of this world, I understand how it works. It's trying to find practical solutions, especially when a lot of artists don't have a lot of money to be throwing at these kinds of disputes. It's trying to find a way of mutually kind of a compromise, I suppose, and try and find a way forward so people can carry on doing what they're doing. I also deal with, as we were discussing earlier, then it sort of broadens out the work I do into sort of intellectual property generally, and dealing with all that kind of stuff. And as I've said before, because we're a full service firm, we then can look into doing basically providing legal services for musicians. So if it's leases and purchase of studios, to buying or selling their houses. Dealing with a band recently who they've instructed one of my colleagues to deal with the purchase of his house. That's still something that we deal with. It helps that we can say to, well, he's going to be out on tour for a month, so he might not answer your email straight away, or there's going to be these issues in terms of paying deposit or trying to get monies through. It could be different from your sort of regular person who just works 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. These are some of the things I get to do as part of being involved in music. It's important, I feel, I make this point to my boss, it's important that I go to gigs, so I'm still in touch with what's going on. So I take part in quite a lot of things. There's a really worthwhile event in Leeds called the Unconference, which takes place every May. And it's really a sort of industry day, much like today, but for the music industry. And you get lots of people coming along from labels and management and promotions companies, all that sort of thing. And there are sessions much like this and various other sort of one-to-ones and things where people in bands or involved in the music industry generally can talk to people like me or people from labels and actually find out a little bit more, put CDs in hands or whatever. So that's really worth doing, because a lot of these other things tend to sadly all be based in London. So for something to come up to Leeds is it's really good, really worthwhile. But I do also go down to this Association of Independent Music conference. That's one of those events that is in London. It's really worthwhile. I say to you again, if you've got an interest in the arts and in fashion, it's worth looking on the internet, seeing what kind of events for that industry are on. Yeah, book a train down and go and just get to meet people that are actually in the industry. Ask them again for work experience, that sort of thing. And really, it's amazing how, if you're in the same room with someone and you shake their hand and say, this is what I'm really interested in this, can I come in and do some work experience, or is there anything you can tell me, help me? It makes such a difference compared to just getting an email where you just think, well, has this person emailed 100 people just on the off chance someone will reply? So I found that it's great for me in terms of meeting people and networking, all that kind of stuff. But if you're thinking of looking for a career after school in fashion design, it's worth looking at what events are on, going down if you can, go with a friend or whatever, and actually go and meet some people.
One more minute, if that's all right.
Well, yeah, of course it is. I'm coming to the end. So some of the other things I do, again, this is using sort of industry experience in a professional capacity. So writing articles, sort of giving guidance to young musicians and musicians of all ages, really. Contributing to various publications. Do guest lecturing. I'm going after this to actually go and do a workshop at Leeds College of Music, giving a presentation on various legal issues that their students might have. And I do a lot of mentoring. I've actually been involved with the AMP Awards. You might have seen their stand outside. Did some mentoring sessions with them. I do Q&A sessions with BBC Introducing as well. Just generally, just try and pass on the experience that I have, and mentoring as well, as I said. We also take part in sponsoring various events. So we sponsor Bingley Music Live and Centre Stage, which is raising funds for Martin House Children's Hospice. I think that's about it. So hope that's been of use to someone. I'll be around until 4 o'clock today, so if you want to come and speak to me, then please do.
Next week.
Okay. Thank you.